Now that we have a pretty good idea about what public accounting is versus private accounting, let's figure out what the differences are of the different types of public accounting. And if you missed my last video discussing what the difference between private and public accounting are, go check it out. Hi, my name is Michaela. I'm a senior in college studying accounting and finance. I actually graduate in May. I've started my journey towards getting my CPA license, and I work full-time at a large public accounting firm. Today I want to talk to you guys about the different types of public accounting. We'll be talking about the ones that are most commonly known, and that's auditing, tax, and consulting. Before we get started, make sure that you hit the subscribe button down below and hit the notification bell so you get notified every time I upload a new video. So I wanted to talk about the type of public accounting that I know the least about and work my way up to the one that I know the most about. So we're going to start with consulting, go into auditing, and then talk about tax. We'll kind of go over the definition of each of them, day-to-day tasks kind of thing, and then talk about what everyone truly cares about, the salary. I do want to throw a disclaimer out there that any numbers that I tell you are simply averages. They're not exact numbers. Salary can vary depending on where you live, depending on the firm you work for. Is it, are you working for a big four firm? Are you working for a small local firm? All of those things are going to vary, and they're going to change your salary as well. So the most basic definition of consulting that I could come up with is consultants help clients manage their finances. They help them with forecasting and just other random business decisions. So they're kind of like a business advisor or almost like an outside business manager. And I'm not sure if this is common everywhere, but I know in my firm, consultants don't need their CPA. So I do know that for some consultants, that was kind of their deciding factor on going into consulting over tax or auditing. So finding the salary for a consultant was actually kind of difficult since this isn't an area of my own expertise. I don't know very many consultants or anything like that, so I didn't really have anybody to ask. But from what I could gather, the average starting salary for a consultant is around $59,000, whereas the salary once you start to get up towards like a manager level is closer to $93,000. Just to show you kind of the, pay raises. And with consulting, I really don't know what the average time is for people to get promoted. Even at my own firm, I'm really not sure how that works. So next we're going to talk about auditing, or a lot of firms call it assurance. So if you go into like an internship and expect to see that you're an audit intern, chances are you're not going to see that. You're going to see that you're an assurance intern. So what auditors do is they check the accuracy of financial statements, and they just make sure that their clients are following GAAP regulations, which are set forth by the SEC or the Securities and Exchange Commission. So all these GAAP regulations are generally accepted accounting principles. They're just a general guideline to help accountants all have one way to do something. It just kind of helps prevent companies from just kind of being able to do whatever they want, and they can just have one uniform way of doing it. There's no, trying to figure out, because a lot of times there's multiple ways to do something. So just having one set way to do it allows like public investors to be able to look at it and actually understand what the financial statements are saying. So basically auditors are giving their stamp of approval of the company's financial statements before the company hands it out to the public. Now, obviously this is a very basic definition, but it would be hard for me to go into a huge amount of detail since I'm not actually an auditor. So I don't know what the daily tasks entail. My only experience in auditing is the auditing class I'm taking right now. So from what I could find, the average starting salary for an auditor is around $56,000, but by the time they become a manager, they're usually making closer to around $104,000 a year. Alright, so now we're going to talk about tax. This is my job. I'm a tax accountant, so I know a little bit more about the tax side of things. Not a lot, I'm still new, but I do have experience. This is my second busy season, so I do have some experience in tax. So my job as a tax accountant is to help clients fill out their tax return and just make sure that they're following tax regulations. And that's not only regarding just the return itself, but there are certain things that you have to do on the business side and the accounting side to make sure that you're able to follow tax regulations. Honestly, since I'm still very new A lot of my job is just making the tax return look like it did last year. And if there's something that looks different than last year, like if a line isn't filled out this year but it was last year or vice versa, I need to know why that's happening. So if a reviewer comes and asks me, hey, why didn't they get this credit this year but they had it last year, I can tell them, oh, they didn't meet the income limitation, or they, made too much money for it, or whatever it is. Especially with how much tax regulation has changed in the past couple years, stuff like that's really important, because not everyone knows everything. Like even partners were learning everything last year, and senior managers, they were all learning with us last year, so it was kind of a challenge in itself. So it does involve a lot of research, mostly once you kind of get out of the preparer stage and you start reviewing. Now I keep saying preparing and reviewing. What that means is, so I'm a preparer. I physically prepare the return. I input all the data and stuff like that. So at my firm, the preparers are typically an intern, an associate, or sometimes a senior associate, depending on the difficulty level of the return. Then once we're done with it, it goes to a reviewer who then looks over the return, makes sure, everything's correct, and they check to see if anything needs to be fixed. And then they send it back to the preparer, and the preparer has to make those changes. And then we send it back to the reviewer, and then they look it over again, make sure there's nothing else. Usually it doesn't get sent back again, because then it gets sent to a secondary reviewer, which is typically the signer. Not always, but typically I would say it's usually the signer. So then it goes to that secondary reviewer, they look over it, they tell the reviewer, hey, you missed a couple of things, and at that point, the reviewer will just fix it, or they'll actually send it back to the preparer again. I haven't seen that happen very often. I would say there's only been a couple of times it's happened, and it was more of a learning experience than anything. Yeah, otherwise for the most part, once it hits the secondary reviewer, preparers probably won't see it again. So then after that, it just, it gets signed, wrapped up, and sent out the door. It's a pretty lengthy process and just kind of goes around in circles, but that's intentional to make sure that, there's no fraud happening, or, the tax accountants doing their job and they're actually following tax regulations and not just trying to get the client the biggest refund possible. While yes, technically that is also our job, is to help try to get that refund, there's only so much we can do. I mean, if the client didn't pay any estimated tax payments and they made, $200,000, chances are they're going to owe money because they made all this income and didn't pay anything in, unless it's from like a W-2, the wages from your job, and your company's paying those taxes for you and it's being taken out of your paycheck. But a lot of times when people, like entrepreneurs and just like people that have their own businesses and stuff like that, they have to pay estimated payments throughout, usually it's quarterly. Usually they make quarterly estimated payments, and that helps, obviously, with having to owe money during tax time. Okay, now that I rambled about tax more than anything else. So the projected starting salary of a tax accountant is actually only $54,000. And then once you make it up to a manager level, which for my firm, so at my firm, I think it's this way for audit and tax, but like I said, I don't know about consulting. You start out, if you do an internship or whatever, and you start out as an associate, you're associate level for 2 years, and then minimum. And then you move to a senior associate for about a year or so. We're pretty low on upper management level right now, so that would be why a lot of people are not staying as senior associate very long. But yeah, so you stay in senior associate for about a year, and then we actually have a supervisor level, which not all firms have. So then you stay in that supervisor position for, I would say, probably at least 3 years. And then you move up to manager. If I were to guess, I would say you're looking at 6 to 8 years before you become manager. But once you get to there, so about low end 6 years at the firm, you're making $109,000 a year. So as you can see, consulting starts out at the highest in the very beginning, but then tax ends up the highest once you kind of get up there. A lot of that is just tax is considered a specialty. So as you move up in your career, you become more specialized in tax, and then you can also become even more specialized in specific industries. Like some of our common industries are, we have construction companies, we have medical companies and stuff like that, retirement plans, trusts and estates. You can specialize in a specific type of return, like if you prefer to do C corporations or S corps or partnerships. If you like to do individuals, you can do you can work with wealth management and work with what we call it PCS, which is private client services. So it's going to be like more high net worth individuals. What type of public accounting are you considering? Audit, tax, or consulting? Did your opinion change at all during this video? If it did, leave a comment down below and let me know. If you found this video helpful, please make sure and give it a like or even a dislike if you felt I could have expanded in any more topics, or let me know in the comments how I can help you more and any questions you might have. And your questions don't even have to be accounting related. Make sure you subscribe to my channel if you enjoy this content. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye!